Oh my God, there is an update to Snapseed. And in this episode of Micromatic, I'm going to talk about the top 5 improvements for photographers. In an earlier video here in Micromatic, I talked about my mobile photography workflow. I have a workflow where I can take a picture straight from my camera, put it on my mobile device, let's say my iPhone, or in this case, my iPad, and edit it entirely on mobile apps. Now, the app I primarily use is an app called Snapseed. Snapseed's a very, very powerful photo editing app. It's been around for years, but the problem is Snapseed hasn't had a significant update, and I'm gonna say a year and a half, maybe even longer. And just recently, just last week, Google actually pushed out a very significant update to Snapseed. It's now Snapseed 2.0. And I just wanted to take a second and talk about the best improvements that they've made to this app, because there have been a lot of improvements to it. This is, Snapseed was already an awesome app. This 2.0 version is just all that much better, and I'm going to show you why. So let's start with opening up a photo. I've got a couple of photos already saved here, and warning, if you are a little squeamish, there's a little bit of whale gore here. This is a beach or a dead whale that showed up on the beach pretty close to my house, and I was out shooting it recently. And pardon if it's a little gory, but it actually is a pretty good shot for showing off these improvements. All right, so the first improvement is that you get a much bigger view of the picture that you're editing. In the old version of Snapseed, it tended for some reason to keep like a margin around your photo. And so, the new version, it doesn't. It just lets the photo go full bleed from edge to edge. This is a portrait-oriented photo. If I had the iPad rotated that way, you would see that it would actually fill up even more of the screen. And so that's pretty awesome. In addition to that, you can also double tap to zoom now, which is something that I'm pretty sure you couldn't do before. And that's incredible, right? So you can double tap to zoom, you can use this little thing to pan around, or it looks like you can also use 2 fingers to pan around. And now I'm just in this mode that I'm at right now, I'm not actually making edits. This is just kind of like a little preview mode, but you get that same control no matter which edit screen you're on. And so now the second big improvement for us photogs is you go into the tune image section, which is a section that's existed in the last version of Snapseed, but there's a new addition, right? In addition to the shadow slider, which has existed for a while, right? If you're used to using Lightroom or Photoshop, you should be used to that shadow slider. But in addition, they've added finally a highlight slider, okay? And what this slider does is it controls how bright your highlights are. A lot of the times you'll have a photograph like this where the highlights are blown out, right? Let's see, let's double tap. And we'll have a photo like this where the highlights are blown out, right? I took this picture in RAW, and so these things are just bright white, but because I took it in RAW, there actually are some details there that I can save. And that's what's a great thing about this highlight slider, is now I can slide that back down, and look at all that detail I actually pulled out of there, right? Again, this is a little button that Snapseed's had for a while that lets you compare the unedited version versus your edit. And you can see how this is basically a bright white section of the photo, but after I've pulled down the highlights, not only am I getting some of that detail, I'm also pulling out some color that you didn't really see before. And so that's awesome. Being able to have that highlight slider is a huge boon for photo editors like myself. Now, my number 3 improvement for photographers is perspective correction. They actually call it transform. In my last video where I talked about my mobile photography workflow, I showed you guys an app called Screw It. Now, Screw It's a fantastic app for doing basically the same thing that this is going to do, but it's only available on iOS. It's not available for Android, at least last time I checked. And so this is great that Snapseed has now incorporated this. And here's what it does, right? You can correct for horizontal perspective or vertical perspective. And let's say, this is actually not a very good photo to show this, but let's say I had taken a picture of a building and I had very straight lines that I wanted to actually be straight, but because the building is taller than me and I don't have a tilt shift lens, those straight lines actually come out a little crooked. And so with this perspective control, you can actually tilt the photo up and down and make sure that those images are nice and straight. And this thing actually, if you're paying really close attention, you're gonna get a little preview of my next tip number 4. or not tip, my fourth favorite improvement with Snapseed 2.0, and that is content-aware fill. Again, it's not the term that Snapseed uses for it, but if you've used Photoshop, you should be pretty familiar with the term. Content-aware fill is like, all right, so here I am stretching this image vertically, right? And you can see that as I'm doing that, I'm actually, creating a section of the image that didn't exist before, right? There's no information here. Normally, when I do this sort of this sort of perspective correction, I would have to probably crop out the image, right? So now my cropping point is down here instead of over here. But this actually does something pretty cool, and it's content-aware fill, right? As soon as I release, it actually smartly fills in that missing image. And now it doesn't do a perfect job every time. I actually do wish that there was an option to disable the content-aware fill in the cases that it doesn't work out that well. But it's still really kind of impressive that this is built into the app. So you can see here, it's like filled in the sky where that detail doesn't exist. But because of content-aware fill, it's able to say, I'll just kind of repeat this pattern over here and fill it in for you, and it looks pretty good. The other way that this content-aware fill shows up is actually in this new spot repair tool. This is totally brand new. And previously I'd used another app that did a similar thing called Touch Retouch. Now it's nice that that's just kind of built into Snapseed. And so what this does is, you're gonna maybe have a hard time seeing under my finger, but as I press down, it puts a little circle under my finger, and if I release it, it will basically repair that spot. So look in this photo, right? I've got my finger in the frame like an idiot, but with this spot repair tool, I can actually get rid of it. So I can move my finger up here, highlight that finger, and Snapseed smartly gets rid of it. And that's pretty cool. Let's say I don't like this rock right here, right? Let's say I just want that to be ocean. I can do the same thing, put a little spot repair finger on top of it, and it's gonna replace it with ocean. And I mean, look at that. It doesn't seem to be creating problems, right? It's doing that really, really well, which is awesome. Usually that's the sort of thing that I have to go into Photoshop or Lightroom to do. And it's pretty cool that Snapseed now has that built in. And now the fifth of my top 5 improvements to Snapseed, and this one is probably the most important to me, is editing history. Okay, this photo doesn't have a whole lot of history, so maybe this isn't the best demo of it, but you'll get the gist. Previously in Snapseed, as you made edits, right, you had these same categories. You can move from cropping an image to tuning the brightness and the contrast and the shadows and stuff. But once you move from one edit to the other, you were kind of stuck with those changes. You could revert all the way back to the original photo, but there's no way to crop an image and then change the brightness and then go back and redo that crop. You would just have to basically be stuck with it. Now they've added edit history, which is, I gotta be honest, this is really kind of incredible. So if I click this number 2 up here is showing me that I have 2 steps in my history. If I click that number 2, it shows me my steps that I've done in the past. And what I can do is I can actually click back and see what those changes were. I can see what it looked like before I made those spot repairs. And if I don't like those spot repairs, I can actually go in and edit them and change them. That's really cool. Again, I can go in and edit my tune slider to get this dialed in correctly. And I'm gonna screw up this photo kind of on purpose to show you what I can do. But all right, let's say I made that change. I'm done, and then at some point in the future, I realized that that was a bad idea. I'm gonna go back to my spot repair and maybe undo some of these changes. So now, as if that editing history itself wasn't already impressive, there are actually 2 other features to this that kind of blow my mind. So let's say I go back into that edit history and I click these little mysterious ... I can hit this copy button. And what this is actually going to do is copy that edit history. So if I go in, let's go ahead and save this first. I'm going to save it as a copy. So I've saved my changes. I'm going to go in and I'm going to open up another photo. Let's take this photo. which is a totally different photo. But let's say I want to actually apply the exact same edits that I made to that last photo. Rather than having to go through all these steps again to try and recreate it, I can actually just go up to here, go to my edit history, and insert. And what that has done is now copied my edits from the previous photo into this photo. This is pretty awesome. You know, if you're, say you have a lot of photos that are very similar, right? Maybe you've taken a lot of pictures of your kids playing soccer, and you know, the edits, you know, they're all kind of similarly exposed, and it makes sense to copy your edits from one shot to another. In this case where I showed you, this is actually a terrible case for copying edits from one photo to another, but it does, you know, show that it can be done. And now here's the other thing that blows me away about this. If I go in, let's go ahead and let's save these changes again. I'll save it as a copy. So now if I go back and I open from device, I'm gonna edit that last photo that I just edited. We made changes to it. Now look at this. That number 2 is still there. My edit history is still here. It's persistent even though I've closed that photo entirely. In fact, right, let's close out the app entirely. The app is completely closed. I'm gonna go back into Snapseed. I'm gonna open that same photo, and you're gonna be amazed because, again, the edit history is still there. Now I'm gonna sneak in a little 6th bonus awesome feature for photographers, and I'm actually sneaking this in because I just found out about it, and it's kind of hidden, but I think you'll find it pretty useful. So let's go back into my edit history, right? And when I did tune image, usually when you're using tune image, it is affecting the entire photograph, right? Let's go back in and I'll show you how it's doing it, right? So if I go to my brightness adjust, it's adjusting the brightness of everything at the same time. But you can see in this photo, right, down here, it's pretty dark, and up here, it's pretty bright. So if I wanted to increase the brightness of just this area, normally I'd be kind of SOL, but what I can do is I can make that change, increase the brightness. Now this is overexposed, but what I can do is I can go into the history, click this little brush tool. And this is the secret part. This is the hidden part, is that little brush tool is kind of hidden. And now I can brush on where I want that change to be made. All right, so now I'm brushing those changes, the brightness changes, to only cover up this dark area. So now we can see my photo, compare the before and after, and I've adjusted the brightness, but it's only adjusted the brightness over here. I've removed my stupid finger because I'm an idiot, and I've changed this rock back into water because, well, I don't really know, because. But yeah, there you go. Those are my 5 favorite improvements to Lightroom. Jesus. Those are my 5 favorite improvements to Snapseed. I'm still going to be using Lightroom for certain situations, but it's really, really cool to have this power brought to the mobile apps. If you learned something here, you can hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. I'll see you in the next episode of Micromatic.